Hello, hi, you're listening to The Real Estate Fix with Rich Sherman on your hometown station, KHTS 98.1 FM and AM 1220. Thank you guys for tuning in today. I'm Rich Sherman, your congenial host for the hour. I don't even know what congenial means. I'll be that guy. Anyway, we got a lot of stuff to cover today, a lot of good real estate stuff to go over today. You guys are going to like this a lot. I've got a program I want to talk to you guys about that's really, really a huge deal. But before we get into that, my standard disclaimer. I am not an attorney and I do not give legal advice. That's my wife's job. I hold a California real estate license and I have over 30 years of experience. The opinions I express and the advice I give is strictly my own. I would encourage anyone who has real estate issues, for attorneys, for accountants, anything like that, to also check in with recognized relevant experts like attorneys, accountants, etc. And if you need referrals to those sorts of folks, just let me know. Contact me through the station. Contact me directly. Contact me at thefixwithrich@gmail.com, which is where we get all of our questions and our emails. Again, thefixwithrich@gmail.com. And I'll be happy to get your referrals or answer your questions or whatever we do. So today we've got a couple of things. We'll do a quick market update. Then we're going to talk about a new program designed for buyers. The state of California has just announced a new program that you can use in conjunction with the program that we run in my office and literally get into a house completely for free. You can buy a house and put no money down and have a tremendous amount, or up to 20%, that the state will essentially loan you interest-free and with no payments. So it's a good program. We're going to be talking about that quite a lot because I'm on a mission. As you guys know, those who are listeners know, that I'm on a mission to try to get people out of rentals and into owning property. Unfortunately, the state of California has way too many people renting, not nearly enough people owning. We have the second most amount of renters in the entire United States, second only to New York, and our prices are ridiculous. So we were just talking to somebody earlier today. You've got to get in the game. And the state is making it easier to do that. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. We've got a special guest. We have Alan Clarkson from Kiwi Home Inspections. So we're going to learn a little about home inspections and the importance of home inspections and why that's a big deal. You should absolutely not be buying a house without getting it inspected. I never buy a house, even investment properties. I never buy one without getting it inspected by Alan. He's a great guy. We're going to have him in to talk about all sorts of home inspection stories. It'll be loads of fun. And just to end the show for fun, time permitting, I'm going to give you guys some predictions for the end of the summer because I've been doing this a long time. I've got a little over 30 years in doing this. I'm not always right, but I'm right more than most people you know, and I'm certainly right a lot more than I'm wrong. And I'm going to tell you what the real estate market's not just going to look like today. We'll talk to you at the top of the show, but I'm going to tell you what the real estate market's going to look like at the end of summer. I'm going to give you 5 things that I guarantee you are going to be the case by the end of this summer. So let's start with a market update. Let's get right on into that here. Well, let's start with this. According to the nice people at Moody's is a huge economic predicting firm. They also rate stocks and bonds and things like that. They're pretty important. According to the good folks at Moody's, home prices will fall in 2023, which is a bold prediction to make since we're almost halfway through the year. And they are falling. And again, here's the big headline. They're going to continue to fall through 2024. According to the good folks at Moody's, the existing housing prices, this is nationwide, the average sales price for a house nationwide has fallen 12% year over year. So in Santa Clarita, we've dropped out 10%. LA County, we've dropped out 10%. And I thought we had about another 10 to go, but I'm revising that now. I'm going to say we have another about 5 to go. So we're going to lose about another 5% by the end of the year, I think. And I'm hoping, and by the way, those of you who are listening right now saying you totally disagree with me and you want to yell at me about it, totally cool. I'd love to be wrong about that. I do not root for real estate values to go down. I own a lot of real estate. I'm in the real estate business. I root for them to go up. But rooting for them and knowing what's going to happen are often two separate things. We're going to go over why. But in any case, according to Moody's, the housing market here has kind of hit the skids. Existing home sales have dropped 12 out of the last 13 months, which we've talked about last week as well. Now, there has been a surge in home pricing. There was a surge during the pandemic. During the pandemic, housing prices went up nearly 20% because interest rates were low and housing inventories were low, so there were bidding wars and all kinds of crazy stuff. So during the 2.5, 3 years of the pandemic, if you owned a house, you did pretty well. You gained about 20% in value. I mean, my house alone, the house I live in, was worth a lot less in 2020 than it is worth now. We've given back about half of that increase because we've lost about 10%. So we're up about 20, down about 10, so we're still 10% ahead of the game if you look at the beginning of the pandemic to now. And I think we're going to lose another 5. But anyway, according to the good people at Moody's, here's what Moody's had to say about it. Do not expect a rebound soon. Likely increases in unemployment and a U.S. recession later this year will additionally pressure sales and prices. In other words, Moody's latest report says they're pretty sure that the recession is going to hit later this year. It's going to get deeper than it is now. And as that recession gets worse, it is going to drive interest rates up and it is going to drive housing prices down. According to Moody's, prices have slumped big time in San Francisco. These are the cities that, according to Moody's, have seen the biggest price slumps. See if you can figure out what all of these have in common. San Francisco, Seattle, Denver, Las Vegas, Phoenix, San Diego, Portland, and Austin have all seen the biggest price reductions. I think there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 on that list. We're number 9, Los Angeles. Values have held up better in several states, particularly on the East Coast, Florida, up to Maine. Housing prices have held a lot better than they have here. But everything west of the Rockies, and that is what all of those cities, San Francisco, Seattle, Denver, Las Vegas, Phoenix, San Diego, and Portland, and Austin, all have in common, is that they're all essentially West Coast cities. You don't have to tell me Austin is in Texas. I know Texas is in the middle of the country, but Austin really functions very much like a West Coast sort of city, the economy there. So those are the ones who've seen the biggest hit. Those are also the ones that saw the biggest increase in values over the pandemic. But so according to Moody's, on a national basis, they expect home prices to decline about 4% in 2023 and 2024. So that's pretty much in line with what I've been telling you guys. It turns out that if you listen and take my advice, we do pretty well. Because I've been saying 10%, then maybe another 10, then I've revised it back to 5, and they're saying 4 by the end of the year, and another 4 in 2024. So they're predicting an 8% loss by this time in 2024 in average sales prices. And Moody's is a big predictor, so what they say tends to happen. Now, they're talking about, risk across various metros and market segments with declines from peak values of 15 to 25% are more possible in some areas. In addition, they expect new home sales to drop about 20% this year. So, and I think they're talking about not necessarily pricing on new homes, but they're talking about inventory as well. The elevated levels of home prices and mortgage rates will likely hurt demand for several years. Home prices affordability has plummeted to its lowest level in decades. It is harder to own a home now than it has been in decades. And the reason for that is simple. The typical payments on mortgages have gone through the roof. You know, the interest rate is a full 2 points or more higher than it was just a year ago. And as a result, the interest rate going higher, payments are much, much higher. For most people, buying a house now versus buying a house even a year ago is going to cost you about 30 to 40% more. That's a lot. That's a lot in an area that's not affordable to begin with. So pretty expensive. Now, why is that happening? I always like to get to the whys of these things. I don't like to just tell you guys this is it, just leave it at that. I want you to know why. Now, our good friend Sam at the Mortgage Hub, who we'll have on next week, Sam at the Mortgage Hub puts out a great newsletter. I mean, truly tremendous. Do yourself a favor. If you're interested in the mortgage markets, you're interested in real estate, sign up. Go to themortgagehub.com. Sam's a friend of the show, sponsor of the show, is the Mortgage Hub, and go get on his mailing list. It's really good. So we're going to talk about why the interest rate is doing what it's doing so you can have a little bit greater handle on the economy in general and housing prices in general. And the long and the short of it is, the Federal Reserve, you guys know, I say all the time, I just have to take the attitude, and I think it's the only healthy attitude to take, is that the guys running the Federal Reserve are a whole lot smarter than I am, because I do not understand what they're doing. Now, I didn't go to Harvard, I didn't go to Yale, I didn't go to Oxford. I went to Chico State, not exactly a bastion of economic thought, although pretty nice school, good people, they're very smart, had a good time there, learned a lot. Anyway, I have to just take the attitude the Fed knows what they're doing, because the only other option is white-knuckled fear. I'm not fond of that, so I'm going to go with they know what they're doing, because what the Fed is doing, is what they're saying, is they want to get inflation down to 2%, which right now it's about 8%. Now, it was at 11, cresting over 12%. That means the cost of goods and services is going up on an average per year of about 12% when the Fed started this crusade. And unfortunately for all of us mere mortals, what they've done is they've raised interest rates steeper than I've ever seen in my lifetime. I mean, we've gone from roughly 3.5 to 4.5 to 5.5 to 6.5 now, almost touching 7 there for a little bit in the course of basically 18 months. And that's devastating for an economy. It has curbed inflation. We're down to about 8%, but their goal is to get down to 2%. And that's what I don't understand, because the cost of living is traditionally 3%, 3.5% is healthy. How are you going to get the cost of goods and services to go up no more than 2%? So I hope they know what they're doing. But under that heading, because they've raised the interest rate like they have, that is what cratered Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank. So Silicon Valley Bank on the West Coast is no longer, and Signature Bank on the East Coast is no longer, because of the rise in interest rates. Now, they made some bad bets against the interest rate, and the interest rate's what crushed them. But the point is, they're raising the interest rate hurt the financial markets. It shuttered them. And so what the reaction to that was a lot of people getting out of the stock market and moving their money into the bond market. And when investors look for safe harbors because they're worried that things are going to get dicey, what they do is they pull money out of stocks, which are much more volatile, high risk, high return, and they put them into bonds, lower risk, lower return. But when money flows from the stock market to the bond market, obviously it damages the stock market, and that holds the interest rate down. More money in bonds means interest rates stay down. Less money in bonds means interest rates go up. There are changes, obviously, but in general, it's a pretty good rule of thumb. So, over the last week, the bond market, because of the shutting, or last 2 weeks, because of the problems with the banks, because of the interest rate, even though the interest rate went up a quarter point, the actual effective interest rate, what you and I would pay to go get a mortgage, didn't rise. So it got to 6.5. It didn't really go any higher. In fact, it came down a tiny bit. So it's about 6.4 for most things, 20% down with good credit. So, which is strange because there's usually a pretty direct correlation between when the Fed raises the interest rate and the effective interest rate. And I'm going to say that's very, very good news because the fact that the interest rate remained stable and didn't go up even though the Fed raised the prime rate helped the housing market. So the last 2 weeks, we've had this kind of nice little bubble that we're in, and it's going to last for another couple of weeks until the interest rate goes up again, where houses are coming to market and selling quicker, things are speeding up, prices are going up a tad, just a tiny, tiny bit. Probably more accurate to say they're not going down as much. But that's not going to last because what will happen for sure is the interest rate will continue to go up. The Fed's next meeting, they're going to raise it again. I can guarantee you that. And when they do, the market will probably react and probably go up again. And we'll be back to where we were a couple of weeks ago, except we'll have even higher interest rates. We'll be back in this with the same problem. So anyway, let's talk about the exactly what the bond market's doing. So at the outset of the recent outset in the banking sector, stocks and bonds shifted into risk aversion modes. What we were talking about, they moved from stocks into bonds. The scariest news that came out of all of this was that the promising developments in the bond market have now kind of faltered because people are going back into the stock market as things have gotten a little bit less risky. So the yields and stuff are going a little bit higher in the stock market. They're now moving back out of bonds. So that's probably what has been a good news for the last couple of weeks is probably going to reverse itself coming up. As I just said, I'm pretty sure it's going to. Now, here's something important I wanted to touch on regarding if those of you who get deep into this stuff. I won't get into the weeds too much. But there are two major indexes that you look at when you want to know what the interest rate's going to do. One of those is FHFA, and the other is the S&P, the Case-Shiller Index. Both of those indices in the past 2 weeks have shown prices in apparent free fall if you look at them year over year. And that's where it gets dangerous. If you're just looking at year-over-year terms, you're not getting the whole picture because if you compare this year with last year, where we're at now is horrible at interest rates, so it looks like the markets are in free fall. But they're really not, because if you take a look at the numbers month over month, the FHFA index in particular actually moved back into positive territory, which is good. It means it's going up, so the interest rates will stay lower. Whereas the Case-Shiller index was down a little, but not enough to really make a difference. A little slower pace of losses and things of that nature. So the bottom line is the markets are starting to stabilize despite the banking loss, despite the ridiculous increase in what I call ridiculous increases in the interest rate. And all in all, it's good stuff on the horizon. So that is how the interest rate, kind of give you a little quick primer there on how the interest rate works. If you're curious, you can call me anytime. I'll be happy to give you a longer one. But really, in real estate, what it comes down to is two things: the interest rate and consumer confidence. If the interest rate is low, prices are going up because money is cheap. If the interest rate is high, prices are going down because money is more expensive. Affordability is a big part of that. Obviously, more people can afford to get loans, they take them. If more people can afford to buy houses, they do so. Basic supply and demand. The other thing, besides the interest rate, which is the most important indicator, is consumer confidence. So if you look at the CPI, or if you look at any sort of the consumer confidence measurements, what you'll see is things are not great. Even though no one wants to use the word recession, or they want to say one's coming, I'm going to tell you we're in one. It's nice that the employment numbers have been strong, and that's really the only thing that's been underpinning the economy in general. Because if those numbers start to weaken, and they will, we're going to have a problem. The recession that we are currently in is going to become official in the not-too-distant future. So we got a little bit of time, so you should make the use of it. So that's what I've been saying. If you're selling a house in the next year, get on it now. If you're buying a house in the next year, get on it now. Time is not on your side. And under that exact heading, there is a new program that just came out from the state of California. The thing is, they released it 9 days ago. That's it. It's only 9 days old. And the way it works is it's through a program called CalHFA, which we use a lot. But what's fascinating about this program is it's the first one I've seen that's a true equity share. Now, without getting in the weeds too much, what that means is somebody gives you a chunk of money, usually your down payment, in this case 20%, and in return, you give them a piece of your equity when you sell the house. The way the program works is you have to get qualified for it. But if you're a renter, you're a first-time buyer and you're renting right now, or even if you're not renting, you're just a first-time buyer, what you can do is you can apply to this program through CalHFA, and Sam at the Mortgage Hub can help you. Sam at the Mortgage Hub can help you. So can I. We'll get you into the program. But once you qualify for it, they will give you 20% down. So if you're buying a $500,000 house, they're going to give you $100,000. So your loan amount would be $400,000, which means you'd have a monthly payment. I did some math here earlier, which means you'd have a monthly payment of about $3,100. So think about this. You could buy, if you're renting right now, and you can hear what I'm saying, please pay attention. This is super important. This is the reason I have a radio show. This is the reason I talk about this sort of stuff. This is why I do it, because I want to tell you guys this kind of stuff. This is super duper important. This is the kind of thing that I'm not kidding when I say this could change your life. It could put you into owning when you never otherwise would. It can help you build generational wealth for yourself and for your children and for your children's children. You got to get in the game, and this is a way to do it. So the way it works is, let's say you're going to buy a $500,000 house, $500,000 house, which is a small starter house in this area. So a $500,000 house, you get $100,000 through CalHFA. They just give you the money. You get an 80% loan, also through CalHFA. Your payment would be, including taxes and insurance, your payment would be about $3,100 a month. Now, as the average rent in Santa Clarita now is $3,250, $3,300 a month, $3,100 a month is not a hard pitch for most people. So if you're renting out there and you can hear me, $3,100 a month, you can buy a $500,000 house. So they give you the $100,000. It just sort of goes as a second on the property. You get a first for 80%, which in this case would be $400,000. Your payment, including taxes and insurance, would be $3,100. Now, when you go to sell the house, you pay them back the $100,000 that you borrowed. By the way, there is no interest on this money, on that $100,000. You make no payments on this $100,000. It just sort of sits there. When you sell the house or refi or whatever, that's when you pay back that $100,000 plus 20% of your equity. So let's say you bought a house for $500,000 and you're selling it for $600,000. Well, you give them back their $100,000, you give them back 20%, and you keep the other $80,000 because you made $100,000 in profit, in my example. So they'd get $20,000 of that, the state, and you'd get $80,000 of that. But the point is, if you're a renter, you can literally buy a house right now with no money down through a state program where you get 20% down, so your mortgage is only based on the 80% you're borrowing. I'm going to say that again. If you're a renter and you can hear my voice, you got to give me a call. And if not me, you don't like me, whatever, call somebody else, but get into this. Because if you're renting right now, you could theoretically get 20% down from the state. Could be, I think it maxes out at $200,000 if I'm not mistaken. So you could theoretically buy a $500,000 house, $500,000 property. The state's going to loan you for free $100,000 in this example. You're going to have a loan of $400,000, and your payment would be $3,100 a month. And you do not have to come up with a penny to move in, not one red cent. And what's even better, you can use this program with other programs. That's new. I've never seen that before, not from the state. So what that means is not only can you get 20% down from the state, but you can also use our program, our rental rebate program, where we'll give you 10% of the rent you've already paid back to go buy a house. So you get a down payment from the state, you get the closing costs from my office, and you literally get into a house for free. It is less than the first and last you'd have to put down if you go to rent. So if you're a renter, you got to take advantage of this. This program's not going to last long, I promise you. The state of California has $300 million, which sounds like a lot of money until you realize the average sales price for a house in California is about $600,000. So that means they're going to be giving out grants on average of about $120,000 to throw. It's going to chew that up very quickly. They got about 2,400 grants they can give. It would not at all surprise me if we got heck, we might get it today. But if we got a notice in the not too distant future that says the program is already being suspended because they've already used up all the funds. Now, if that happens, and it will, it's going to happen fast. They'll probably get more money into it and start doing it again because it's a great program. I mean, literally, I'm going to say this one more time because this is this important. This could literally change your life. If you hear me talking right now and you're a renter, this could change your life. I bought my first house at 18 because my mom made me do it. Because I bought my first house at 18, I own a house now. I'm a landlord. My mortgage is paid. But the reason for that is, the reason I don't have to worry about a mortgage is because I got into doing this at 18 because my mom helped me out. My mom got me started because she was already in real estate. This is the state doing essentially for you the same thing my mom did for me. They will give you, I'm going to say this again, they will give you 20% down. So let's say you're buying a $620,000 house. They'll give you $120,000. Your loan will be $500,000. Your payment would be $3,875 a month, including taxes and insurance. Again, most rents in this town are higher than that. So it's completely ridiculous. I want to go over a couple of figures for rent because these are just absolutely shocking. According to rent.com, the average SCV apartment is now $2,500 a month. According to Zillow.com, the average SCV house rental is $3,300 a month. Why wouldn't you own it? According to Payscale.com, SCV housing expenses are 130% above the national average. It is expensive to live here. Utility prices here are 10% above average. Transportation costs are 27% above average. Heck, even groceries are 11% above average. California has a problem. According to the Public Policy Institute, California has the most rental houses in the country, next to only New York, with 17 million renters, 13.6% of all rentals in the United States. 13.6% of all rentals in the United States are in California. 44% of households in California are renters. Almost half, 44% are renters. Home ownership rates in California are the second lowest in the country because of the expense. That's why this program exists. What I'm telling you with all the statistics is the deck is usually stacked against you as far as home ownership. It's not easy to do here, and it's expensive. And if the state's willing to come forward and offer to loan you for nothing your down payment and only ask for a small equity share when you go to sell the property, how do you not take advantage of that? I would much rather get into this program and own a house than go rent one for $3,300 a month. I've got one available right now, $3,700 a month. I have clients who have people who want to rent it. I'm telling them, go buy a house. We have 3 clients in this program already. It is definitely something you need to get into. So if you have questions about this program, and I hope you do, please reach out to me at thefixwithrich@gmail.com, thefixwithrich@gmail.com, or just call me on my cell phone. I give out my cell phone number on the air all the time, 661-714-1400. That number again is 661-714-1400. I answer that phone number morning, noon, and night. If you're not able to write it down, you can get the show on YouTube. You can get through the station. My name is very unique. It's Sherman with a Z. I'm easy to find. Please get a hold of me so I can tell you about this program, because you should not be renting. You should be buying. Own a house. Get into the game. Make some equity. Build some generational wealth. You got to do it. And I don't see an opportunity like this coming around that often. It's the first one I've seen like this in my 30 years of doing it. This is fantastic. You need to look into it. Anyway, we're going to break here real quick. We're going to pay some bills, run some commercials, and when we come back, we're going to have Alan from Kiwi Home Inspection. We're going to talk about home inspections and the importance of getting a home inspection and all that good stuff. So I'm Rich Sherman, your host for the Fix with Rich here on KHTS 98.1 FM and AM 1220. Let's go pay some bills. When we get back, we'll talk to Alan. Hello, welcome back. You've reached the Real Estate Fix with Rich Sherman on KHTS AM 1220 and FM 98.1. Thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you for listening. We have a special guest in the studio today. We have Alan Clarkson with Kiwi Home Inspections, and fantastic inspector. Definitely a guy you should know if you're looking into buying a house. And I invited Alan to come join us this week because I wanted to talk to you guys about the importance of home inspection. Because if I get one more client in my office who tells me they didn't know about X, Y, and Z, and I say, well, did you get the home inspected? And they go, why would we do that? I'm going to scream, because it is a relatively inexpensive thing to do, and it will save you thousands, and it will safeguard you, and it provides a report which you can use. There's a whole lot of stuff that comes out of a physical inspection, not just the moment that the inspector comes and looks at the house. And oh my gosh, if we got stories to tell, because you see some funny stuff on home inspections. So anyway, I wanted to welcome Alan. Alan, thank you for coming in. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Rich. I'm glad to be here. Appreciate your time.
Alan is not from California, you can probably tell. I think that just makes it more interesting. You guys can make your own decision about that. But anyway, we usually do viewer questions at this point about home inspections and that, but honestly, the questions I've had lately have not been... They've been real basic stuff, like why should I get a home inspection? And I figured rather than myself answering that, it would make a whole lot more sense to have Alan answer that. So Alan, why should somebody get a home inspection? Start with the basics.
Well, thank you, Rich. So, a home inspection is going to cover the general workings and function of the house. So there's things you just cannot see as a buyer. I'm going to be on the roof. I'm going to be in the attic. If it's on a raised foundation, I'm going to crawl underneath. I'm going to see things you just cannot see. Sometimes things are hidden that you cannot see or don't know about. I'll give you an example. Recently I was in an attic, a large attic. It was high insulation, it was real nice, structure looked good. But look at the very back of the attic, I was like, what is that back there? It's like another wall. I'm like, I got to go back there and check it out. Yeah. There was another room that was built in the attic. It was carpeted, drywalled, lights, electrical, had a door on it, a room in the attic. Why was that room there? Nobody asked the seller, do you know about this room in your attic? No. The agent, no. Okay. Why is this here? So there's just
all right.
Yeah, so there's just things you cannot see always.
Yeah, well, yeah, that comes up a lot. But the point is, you want to test all the mechanical systems of a house. You want to have somebody who is not you look through the house, somebody who's licensed look through the house and tell you what's right, wrong, or indifferent, and produce the report that goes with that. And there's also, when you're buying a house, you get a home inspection. As a realtor, we also use that home inspection when we represent the buyer and with the seller to kind of come up with a deal, because sometimes you'll find a room in the attic, and I'm sure that had to be addressed.
Yes.
Since because I can't imagine it was up to code. And it doesn't have to be up to code, but it's definitely the sort of thing as a buyer you should know. And if you're a seller who's living in that house for some years, it might be helpful to know you had an extra room in your attic.
Exactly, yeah. And the way I see it, this is the biggest purchase of your life.
Yeah.
So you want to put in the most you can to get your value and be sure what you're getting is what you're paying for.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. So, I want to get on the roof. That's the number one thing I get asked is, does the roof leak?
Sure.
So let me get on the roof. Let me walk that roof best I can. Yes, if it's a concrete tile roof, I've got to be more careful how I walk, but I want to see, is there broken tiles? Is there displaced tiles?
Sure.
Is it showing the underlayment paper under the roof now where the sun can dry rot that paper out and cause a leak? Is it an asphalt roof that's getting aged and the shingles are starting to, the granules are coming off? It's just the general aging with the California sun baking on the roof.
Sure.
And when I'm walking, do I feel any dips in the roof? Does the roof give at any point? I had that 2 weeks ago, walking in an asphalt shingle roof. Walking along, it's like, oh, there's a little spring in the roof right here. Okay, this is the middle of the roof on the west side. When I get in the attic, I got to check that, make sure I can see what's going on. I get in there, sure enough, the roof sheathing is rotted out, it needs to be replaced. So just things you cannot visually see from the ground.
Well, also, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's also a lot of buyer beware kind of stuff. Like even if your roof is fine now, it may not be fine a year from now. We get it all the time. The roof is reaching the end of its expected lifespan.
Yes.
Which is inspector speak for you're going to have to put a new roof on this house very soon.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, stuff like that is incredibly valuable. And we see stuff like that all because if you're a buyer, the house might look great. And you might think, great, I've got every penny going into this house. I have no money in reserve. This is everything. This is the greatest house ever. And then you find out, well, in the next couple of years, you're going to have to put on a roof.
Yes.
Or you may have to put on a roof now. And you need to have the budget for that. Otherwise, your very nice investment in your house, it's going to turn to mush.
Exactly. And that's a big expense. And other big expenses would be your heating and cooling system. Mm-hmm. How old is the unit? We need to look at the age of the unit. Is it functioning as it should? It's just those things that add up. Is it one little thing, or is it a couple of big things that can be, expensive?
Yeah, I'll tell a personal story about that. I've got a property right now where a dear friend of mine is my contractor for rebuilding houses, and we had a tenant in there long term. Tenant moved out. House had to be gutted and rebuilt, remodeled. We were happy to do it. It was a lovely house. It's a great house in Valencia. But as part of doing the new air conditioning system, my friend subcontracted it to somebody else. They put in a system that worked fine for the first year, and the second year it sputtered out a bit. So we had it inspected, and the inspector said, why would you have installed a 15-year-old air conditioner in this house? And I said, why? What are you talking about? He said, your air conditioner, because they have production codes on them, so you can see when they were produced. Mm-hmm. He said, well, yeah, your compressor is 15 years old, and your heater is 22 years old. So I don't know who put in your new air conditioning system, but it is in no way, shape, or form new. So we had to have some conversations with my friend the contractor. We're going to get sorted out. We'll have a new system in there shortly. But that's the kind of stuff. See, had I thought about it, had I realized I should have, even after the work was done, had it inspected, I would have known at the outset that this was going on. Mm-hmm. And this is just my own fault because I trusted the contractor, and I still do. I really don't. Things happen. I don't blame him. I blame his subcontractor. But anyway, had I known to get it inspected, because I know where the date code is on an air conditioner, but I hadn't bothered to look. Had I done that, or had I had you come in to take a look at it, then I would have known at the time, and I wouldn't have had the problem I'm having now. So, and I should know better. And this is on a remodel. This is even on a purchase or a sale. This is just a remodel where things went south and should have been inspected.
Sure. I agree. And then on top of that, the number two thing I get asked is the leaks in the plumbing system.
Sure.
So I'm always looking for that. And there can be little telltale signs that the average person buying a home would not look at. I had a house where it was a two-story house. I was in the living room. I looked up at the ceiling, and I saw a little bubble in the paint. It caught my attention straight away. There was no staining going on, but I put my moisture meter on it, and we got moisture. So it's starting to leak. So, and it ends up, and it was an older house. It ends up there was 3 different types of distribution water piping in the house.
And
they'd been repaired and repatched and repaired and patched
and all that fun stuff. Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, actually, that's a good example. I don't know how many people out there listening have a moisture meter. I don't. Mm-hmm. I could get one, I suppose, but I have no cause for one, so why would I?
Sure.
There are a number of tools that I've seen you use, all sorts of things to get moisture and heat and all kinds of stuff that I don't have in my kit bag. I'm not ready to go because I'm not an inspector. So just yet again reinforces the need to get an inspection. We say it's constantly all the time. What are the 3 most important things once you're in escrow? Get an inspection, get an inspection, get an inspection. Those are the 3 most important things, mm-hmm. and they're all the same, so it's easy to remember. Get an inspection, get an inspection, get an inspection. We have clients every so often who decide that they're going to inspect it themselves, or they're going to just they don't need an inspection, and we have a disclaimer we send them. CAR actually has one that they insist that we use as well, saying, we told you to get an inspection. Well, I don't want either one coming back at me, saying, it's going to sue me because you weren't told this. We told you in writing to get an inspection, so please do so. So you see, roofs are number one. Air conditioning number two, plumbing's number three. What else? What's
We're looking
number
at
four?
foundation.
Sure.
Very important, whether it be a raised foundation or a slab foundation. I had a story to tell probably a month or two ago. I was looking on the outside of the house. I noticed there was a large tree. It had a big root system that was kind of close to the foundation of the house. I was like, well, it's kind of close, but let's take a look inside. Didn't notice anything from the outside, but in the living room when I walked in, there was a big throw rug down. And in the middle of the throw rug, I happened to have removed my shoes because it was a house that was nice carpet. I wanted shoes off. Didn't have any booties. I felt on the sole of my foot this bump in the floor. I removed the rug, and yes, the roots of the system were coming through the foundation. Yeah. So, yeah, absolutely, you need to check those things. So again, it's just from experience, from being a home inspector. I'm looking for external things that might come into the house and cause a problem with the foundation. If it's a raised foundation, again, I'm looking at the structure underneath the house, the stem wall. I'm looking for any moisture intrusion under. So they're all big expense items that need to have a good eye on it.
Yeah, and then we haven't even gotten into appliances and the rest of the normal. So that's just the straight up. I'll ask maybe a not so obvious question. I don't want to put you on the spot. How many home inspections have you done?
Let's see. Well, I've been for the last 9-10 years. I've been averaging around 400 to 450 houses per year.
So several thousand.
Yeah. So
yeah, I think it probably makes sense to put your faith in somebody who's inspected several thousand properties rather than just me. I've sold thousands, but I haven't inspected them. Or your brother Larry, who has contractor's license last week. Probably not. Nothing wrong with having Larry come look at the house. More eyes is fine. Mm-hmm. But you want to get somebody in there who is a professional, who is a third party, who is properly licensed, and most importantly, who will issue a report that you can depend on. Because I'll tell you my worst home inspection scenario ever. I had a client, I represented the buyer, this is many years ago, who insisted that their friend was going to do their home inspection. I begged them not to do this. Their friend is a home inspector, just got his license, and he's going to be their home inspector. I said, oh, fine, if that's what you want to do. So friend shows up, in a little Toyota with a sunroof. And I know it had a sunroof because his 6-foot ladder was sticking out the top of the sunroof. That's how he showed up. And it kind of went downhill from there. And the report he issued was 1-page handwritten and missed everything. It said the house had things that it didn't have. It said things were in working order that I know didn't work. And I'm not the inspector. And the unfortunate part for that particular client is because of their refusal to get a proper inspection, we couldn't go back to the seller and say, hey, we need you to fix A, B, and C, because the seller, rightly so, went, this is a report your buddy gave you. It's one piece of paper that's handwritten. This isn't a report. This is his really not all that relevant opinion, to be honest with you. Mm-hmm. We got it done as we always do, but it made it harder. It made it much, much harder for the client. So, yeah, hire a professional. I would recommend Alan, obviously, but hire a professional. Hire somebody who's got some experience doing this sort of thing. And I think 400 or 500 houses a year for the last 10 years is pretty good stead as far as your experiences. So it's I cannot tell you how important this is. This comes up all the time. Also, new houses, even if it's a brand new house, a brand new house construction is just completed, you should still get an independent inspection.
I agree totally. And my first time asked to do that, I was very surprised, but okay, I see your point of view, peace of mind, let's do this. Mm-hmm. So the main contractor was with me at the house. The street wasn't even fully developed yet, brand new house. Started getting on the roof, and the main contractor's like, hey, don't break any of my tiles up there. It says, if I break it, I'll replace it, no problem, but I got to get eyes on, hands on.
Yeah.
And he was telling me up front, I got good contractors, you won't find nothing wrong with this house, it's perfect. And he kept going on and on, trying to sell this house. I get up on the roof, and there's 10 missing tiles at the top peak of the house. The underlayment paper had now been sun damaged, so there's a potential leak there.
Crack, yeah.
So when I get down, I'm doing my overview with the client, walking through a few things. I found that also the sub panel wasn't grounded. They said, no, that the city guy came by, he's licensed, he waved it off, it's good to go. The city guy said it's good. And I says, really, did he get out of his car and take a look?
Yeah.
So, but, there's things you just cannot see unless you get hands-on up front. Have a guy who's from an accredited association. I'm with the California Real Estate Inspection Association. There's a standard of practice we adhere to. There's continual training we need to keep up with. And so we have someone who's looking after us as well, as far as, hey, get educated, Alan, there's a new thing coming out, we're going to teach you, we're going to show you, so we're always getting up to date with new things.
Sure. Well, and nothing against our city inspectors, they're fabulous, but that's not their job. Their job is to oversee an entire tract.
Correct.
And say most of this is correct. It's not to inspect your individual property if you're the buyer of that property. Also, the guys who are building the house, usually the construction foreman on the job, he's only telling you what he's been told. I doubt the foreman got up on the roof before you got there.
Correct.
He was probably up there prior to it being a roof, prior to it being tiled, and his tile guy said they were done, and he went okay, and the city inspector said okay. But had you not been there, homeowner would have bought the house and had a leak pretty soon. I'll tell you my favorite new housing story. This is how I know you need to use an inspector on new houses. Many years ago, when the earth was still flat and dinosaurs ruled the plain, I had a client buying, a very close friend as a matter of fact, buying a house, and what was neat about this house is it had a jacuzzi tub up on the second story, which is a big deal then. Now it's pretty commonplace. And the access to the motor for the tub was on the outside of the house as a little access panel, which again, fairly commonplace now. At the time was a little unique. And we had the supervisor giving us a tour of the house. And I kept saying to my client, I think we should get an independent inspection. And I did this with an earshot of the construction supervisor for the tract. And he said, no, the house is much like yours. No, it's fine. The city said it was fine. I heard the exact same thing. City said it's fine. Everything's good. We're good to go. Don't worry about it. I went, okay, and I'm going to show you how this stuff works. And he was, we do great work here. And I said, I'm sure you do. That's fine. Anyway, we go upstairs, put some water in the jacuzzi tub, enough to get high enough to test the jets, and he's showing him how the jet system works. And the minute he hit the jets, the tub drained like it was like going out of a jet engine. The water sucked out like crazy. And I could tell by the look on his face that was not good. I could also tell by the sprint he made outside that it was even worse, because what had happened is somebody had gone in at the time, I guess it was very profitable, to steal the little inline heating units. So what somebody had done, probably the night before, had gone up with a ladder and hit about 15 houses, we found out later. And what they did is they just hacksawed out the heating units, the inline heating units, for all of these jacuzzi tubs in these houses.
Oh, no.
So the pump was there, but there was no other line. So the minute the pump kicked over, it sucked all that water out of the tub and ejected it right into the space between the floor and the roof in the second story, which left us with a huge, I still have a picture of this somewhere, a huge bubble in the ceiling of the kitchen. I mean, like this 8-foot ceiling, I could go like this and touch it because it had formed a huge bubble because it was full of bath water.
Right.
And we were standing kind of looking at it, and the construction, the construction supervisor, I got to get that water out of there. And I said, yeah. And what he did is he poked it. And when he did, I don't know what he was thinking, it just cascaded down upon him and into the brand new kitchen. I got to hand it to the builder, though, because this is how we worked this out. The builder was, because this is a hell of a story to tell. The builder was fantastic. The builder actually sent my clients and their 2 kids to Disneyland for 2 weeks, put them up in a hotel and everything to get them out of the way for 2 weeks so they could put the kitchen back together and put in new tile and new cabinets and new flooring and fix it, all kinds of great stuff. So I got to hand it. The builder was wonderful.
Yes. But
yeah, you must get an independent inspection, because had there been an independent inspection on that house before we ever got to testing the jacuzzi tub, would have popped the panel in and gone, hey, you got a big hole where I think something like the inline heater might have been. Probably shouldn't put water in this, because if we do, it's going to cause a much larger problem. Which it did. So, yeah, like anything in life, you live and you learn. But yeah, new houses, you need to get an inspection. Resale, certainly. Rental property, anything that you're buying, you absolutely need to get it inspected. And you need to get a qualified inspector who issues a good report. Not only that, you can refer to that report. Like, let's say you have an insurance problem 2 years after. You can refer to that report. Look, I had a physical inspection. This was the condition of the house at the time. My insurance problem was not a pre-existing condition. It is new. So there are all kinds of reasons you go back to that report. I mean, it's fundamental. It's like escrow instructions, like loan instructions. It's absolutely fundamental to a transaction.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah, there's great information put out there. And even maybe a pre-inspection. You're looking to sell your house.
Absolutely.
Have someone come through and check what things the next home inspector might pull out and show you needs to be taken care of. And so you got a heads up and you're ready for what to do.
It's actually an excellent point. We do that on our listings as well, because we also like to have a report to hand the buyer. I've found that there are buyers like, I don't know about that house, but you hand them a report and they go, oh, well, this is the condition of the house. The other 3 houses I'm looking at, I don't know the condition. So I'm going to go get my own report anyway, but I got this report to go off of now. Great. I find most buyers, the more information you're able to present a buyer up front, the happier that buyer is going to be, and the more likely they're actually going to be a buyer for your property. It also makes it easier for the seller because you're not arguing over stuff. This is what's going on with my house. And if you find something we didn't know about, fine. But I had the house inspected. This is what I know it to be. I had a good inspector do it. They issued an excellent report. Here we are. So everybody kind of knows what they're doing. It's just like anything else. It's information. It just helps everybody.
Absolutely. Yep, I agree. And just having someone who's experienced and has had the proper training. And some people will ask, well, are you a contractor? Do you have a contractor's license? And they're all good questions, and I see where they're coming from. Mm-hmm. And that's good to ask. A contracting background is good, but they'll specialize in 1 or 2 areas. Whereas a home inspector, we're trained by the California Real Estate Inspection Association, we need a good knowledge of the workings of the whole house inside and out. Mm-hmm. And so we're looking at a different perspective, but they're all good questions to have. And I welcome when the single lady comes in to buy a house for the first time, she brings in Uncle Bob, and he's a contractor. Hey, two sets of eyes is better than one.
Come on now, Bob. Yeah, sure. Happy to help.
Let's do this together, you know.
Sure.
I'm not out to hide anything or defend myself. Let's do a team job, right?
It's knowledge. Yeah. Well, and the other thing you get out of a home inspection, which we haven't touched on, is, I know you do this with clients for us many times, is you'll walk them through and say, okay, if there's an earthquake, this is where your gas shutoff is.
Yes.
This is what you do. If the water heater explodes, this is where your water main is. This is how you shut it off. Mm-hmm. And I'm constantly amazed at people who are sometimes in the trades who don't know where their own shutoffs are in their own houses. Because builders get really creative with how they do them sometimes. They really do. Same thing with electrical panels. We all know where the panel is, and you can usually get to the main breaker without too much, but you got to look at all this stuff. Anyway, so thank you for coming in, Alan. I want to thank you for coming in and doing, and educating our listeners for this. It's really important.
You're most welcome. My pleasure.
I really appreciate it. We'll have you in again sometime, I'm sure. We love talking about this stuff, and we love to educate you guys. I really appreciate it. We're going to go pay some more bills, do a few more commercials, and we'll come back. I'm Rich Sherman with the Real Estate Fix on KHTS 98.1 AM 1220, your hometown station. Hello, welcome back. I'm Rich Sherman, your host for The Fix with Rich Sherman here on KHTS, where we fix your real estate problems, come up with solutions, and get you back on good financial footing. I want to remind everybody, if you have any questions for me, please, you can reach me through through email at thefixwithrich @gmail.com. You can also call me directly at 661-714-1400. You can also reach through the station. I notice people like to call the show too much, but please feel free to send me your questions. Someone will take on air, but I'll answer all of them. I answer every question. I usually answer them in 24 hours. I have a policy of doing that, so we'll get your problems fixed. But I promised everybody I was going to do a little prestidigitation. I was going to do a little prognostication. I was going to tell you what the real estate market's going to look like by the end of summer. And so here we go. Here's what I'm telling you. You can, if I'm wrong, you can all make fun of me. It's fine, but let's put it down in the record. Here's what I think the real estate market is going to look like by the end of this summer. So, if you're preparing to make any sort of real estate move in the next few months and you're not sure what to expect, I'm going to tell you. The biggest thing, as we've been talking about all day in the last couple of months, is the interest rate. The interest rate right now is a little over 6.5, a little under 6.5, depending on your credit. So about 6.5. By the end of summer, it will be higher. I don't know if it'll break 7. I think it will, but it's definitely going to be higher than the 6.5 it's at now. And I hope I'm wrong. I really do, but I know I'm right. So here are the 5 things I can tell you are going to be true besides the interest rate. The number of buyers in the market will decrease because the interest rate will be higher and there will be fewer buyers in the market. The Fed's determination to get inflation down by raising the interest rate is going to hurt the real estate market. It's hurt it so far. It's going to continue to hurt it. There will be fewer buyers in the market by the end of summer. That's number 1. Number 2, sellers are going to have to put in more effort. The days of just putting a sign in the front yard and getting multiple offers just because you put a sign in your front yard are, unfortunately, for sellers, over. Buyers are getting more power because it's taking longer to sell houses. And sellers are going to have to work harder. You're going to have to get that curb appeal dialed in. You're going to have to make those little repairs to make it look nice because you're going to be in a competitive market. Even with fewer houses out there, you're still going to be in a competitive market. You're going to have to put more forward. Now, in my case, we run a program called the Resale Renovation Program. We'll actually put money into your house to fix it up so you can sell it for top dollar because houses in the best shape sell for the most money the quickest. So we're happy to put money into your house, but we're a rarity in that case. So yeah, sellers, number 1 is buyers are going to will decrease. There'll be fewer buyers in the market at the end of summer. Sellers are going to have to put in more effort for sure because you're going to have your house valued in order to get it sold. Best of my 5 predictions here is number 3. Normalcy is going to return. It's not there yet, but we're getting close. The market's going to get back to normal. People are going to start getting used to higher interest rates. It won't be quite the freak out of, I could have had 3.5%, I could have 4.5%. No, I'm at 6.5%. That'll start to normalize and it'll start to pick back up at the end of summer. After the wave of the fewer buyers, there'll be more coming in at the end. Buyers are going to have more negotiating power. That's number 4. Again, all the reasons I've given you. The buyers that are going to be in the market, there'll be fewer of them, but the ones that are there are going to have more power simply because there are fewer of them. And the last thing, which we've been talking about, is that home prices will continue to decline. And that's just unfortunate. But we had a spike in home prices during the pandemic, and that is now over, and home prices are now coming down. So those are the 5 things by the end of summer. The number of buyers will be lower. There'll be fewer buyers in the market. Sellers are going to have to put in more effort in order to get their house sold. Normalcy will return. It will return by the end of summer as far as, freakouts in the market, but that doesn't mean a good thing or bad thing. It just means the trends will be easier to follow. Buyers will definitely gain negotiating power. and home prices are going to continue to decline. So it's not a whole lot of good look if you're a seller. It's great if you're a buyer, except interest rates are going to go up. So, and you're never going to get a better deal on the house than you're going to get on the interest rate. As a friend of mine likes to say, I don't know if I agree with this saying, but what she likes to say is you marry the house, you date the interest, you date the loan. Because you can always get another loan. The house is what you want to keep. Anyway, so yeah, by the end of summer, it's going to be much the same as we're looking at now. Prices will be a bit lower and interest rates will be a bit higher. That's what it's going to come down to, and that's just the nature of the beast. So for those of you who are wondering if I'm willing to stick my neck out, here's the answer. Yes, I'm absolutely willing to. I'm telling you, by the end of summer, interest rates will be higher, prices will be lower. That is where we're going to be at the end of summer. I think we're probably about 2 or 3% lower. And if the interest rate stays under 7%, that'd be great, but it's going to be above 6.5. I think we're going to be about 6.25. We may even reach 7, but we'll certainly be above 6.25 by the end of summer. At least that's my advice. And like I said, I'm not always right about these things, but I'm right a lot more than most people you know, and I'm certainly right a lot more than I am wrong. So if you have any questions about any of this stuff, you want to talk about any of this, I'm available. You can call me anytime. If I do not answer, please text, and I'll get back to you as soon as I possibly can, because as it turns out, if you take my advice, you will do pretty well. I am, as I say all the time, I'm not always right, but I'm right a lot more than I'm wrong, and I'm right more than most people you know. So you definitely want to talk to me about this stuff. And I'll be happy to tell you why I came to the conclusion I came to. It's not just I don't pull these out of a hat. It's a lot of research that goes into it. So if you have any questions, please give me a call. I'm at 661-714-1400. That number again is 661-714-1400. I'm Rich Sherman. You've been listening to The Real Estate Fix with Rich Sherman on KHTS 98.1 AM 1220, your hometown station.